Hi everyone and welcome. Today we're going to be using watercolors with die cuts to make a beautiful picture. I'll be using for today come from Lian Creative. This is Liability Car Fiat 500. So these are a part of the European die sets that come across Dies R Us every so often. So if you're not already signed up for the emails, I would suggest you sign up in order to receive notifications of any of these European dies that come through. This is really cute because they also give you some ideas of how to actually use the dies that are incorporated. Now there's a basket, there's some flowers, there's a little rack for the car, the Christmas tree or a pine tree, and a surfboard. So one of the things that I like about these are that you can actually utilize them in different ways. You can make a romantic card with a little Fiat. You have the surfboard that you can use. And for whatever reason, the Woody cars kind of come to mind with that surfboard. Or you can make a Christmas card or some type of maybe even a camping type card with a tree on the back. I mean, it really is up to you. These also have sister dies, which were on the site at the time. So just keep an eye out. Again, you want to be able to sign up for the email so that way you get notifications of when these dies are coming out, because they go very quickly and they're really very beautiful. So go ahead and sign up. We'll go ahead and start creating our tag for this particular project today. Here I've die cut the tree, the rack, and the card, and then also embossed it using Canton's XL watercolor paper. This is the cold press kind, and I'm going to be adding in color and decoration to this particular die cut with watercolor. Now you can utilize inks if you'd like, blending inks. You can blend them onto the actual craft. I'm not a big fan of that because I don't get things where I want them and then it turns into a mess for me. So this particular style of adding colors to dies, you know, it's a great way if you have a blank canvas die to actually create detail. You don't always have to have stamped images in order to bring in an image onto your card. This is another way that you could do it. I mean, you could do this definitely with other items, but I love the look of watercolor because it really does give this kind of a softness to it. And also more of a rustic feel. For whatever reason, I get this idea with watercolors that you get a lot of rustic feels to it. Now, one of the things you're going to notice is that as you're adding in color, it's going to drop into those embossed areas, and that's exactly what we want. So it'll be a little bit darker. And once we go back in and start adding in some of those details, that will help us locate things as we add our color in to bring back those details and create lines and divisions and things of that nature. But you do want to kind of be careful as you're going around and adding paint to the image itself right now, that any areas, you know, that you like the tires, I'm not looking to cover them. I'm looking to get them so that they are separated. I just want to make sure that I keep that division at this time. So now we're going to start adding in more items. We have the wheels. We have the bumpers and all of that. And we're going to add in those colors. Now, again, it doesn't necessarily have to be absolutely perfect because a lot of the times with watercolor, you have this beautiful image and you can see some of that water kind of coming off and blurring those lines. So that's the beautiful thing about utilizing watercolor. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. It has to create that idea of, or that image of, and just make the eye see what it is that you're trying to convey. So right now that I'm working all these little details in for the bumper and they're a light gray, that's because it's a lot easier to lay these down first and then work with my darker colors. So I'm going to be coming in with some black and color in those wheels. I'm not going to get it perfect. There's a lot of things that you can do to help correct this, and that's absolutely fine. I can go back in with a white jelly pen to kind of go over some of the areas that I had some imperfections on or went over the lines. I mean, you know, it's not necessarily perfect, but that's the beauty of watercolor. Everybody knows Now with watercolor, it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be exact, but it's the idea of these light shades of colors, just how that translucence looks on images. And that's exactly kind of what I was going for here. All right, so here's my smaller brush. This is my detail brush. And I'm just coming in and saturating that brush with the colors that I used and allowing for very little water to be on it. That will help bring in just the right amount of color. And as you can see, we're now creating those details, those areas that, you know, are those embossed sections or the valleys, I guess you would call them. That's what I'm utilizing as my guide. Those are the areas that I'm adding those colors into. And this really helped to create those detailed lines. I absolutely love how this actually turned out. So just make sure that as you go, take your time. Really don't rush it. I know it looks like I'm going fast here, but that's because I've sped this up. You know, one of the things you also want to look at is here I did a little bit darker on the wheel wells, just because those actually kind of pop out a little bit more. And the color, since it's closer to you, it's a little bit darker than the car itself would be. So that's exactly what I did with this image. Now you can see the details in this. You can see a lot of what's going on and what I was trying to convey. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you're coming in and creating some type of art. Yes, it might be that it's already pre-cut and pre-done, but still, it's a work of art nonetheless. One of the things you're going to notice is that I already colored in the rack with gray as well. So just make sure that you utilize your grays for that as well. I totally forgot to mention that, but there you have it. I'm also coming in with some of the grays to add in that detail. Again, I'm saturating more color on the brush there just to help create some of those lines. And look at how cute that turned out. Next, I'm going to work on the tree. I colored it in with some green, and then I also created the stem as well. I created that division with the colors. Now I'm just going back in and adding in some detail, darkening up those little valleys that are on that tree. And look at how cute that turned out. Okay, as you see here, I already have pre-cut my tag. I have it ready to go. I use this die set from 2D Design. This is the cross stitch nesting tags. This is one of my favorites for my tags. I'm going to come in with tumbled glass in order to add some color. This particular technique that I'm going to show you doesn't cover the full entire tag. I want to have some clouds. So how do we do that? Clouds typically are white, so we're going to leave some white space. Now, as you go, you want to make sure that you're careful to select the areas that you want to have more saturation, and also holding down your tag to make sure it doesn't fold over like it did on me. But I left more of a white space on the center of my tag. And I just didn't leave a circle, but I made kind of an odd shape here, okay? Again, you want it to look more natural. So I'm coming in with areas that are darker, some that are a little bit lighter, and that does help quite a bit, creating that effect of a cloud. You can see that I skipped over some areas, so you'll get the gist of this. And look at how neat that is. You know, figure out what you want to do with this, how you want your cloud to look, where you want the white spaces, and it'll come out perfect. You got it. All right, I'm now ready to bring in some mountain ranges onto this. Now I've taken a piece of paper here and just kind of torn some jagged edges. I have lots of scrap paper, and this kind of helps to create a little stencil for me. Just tear it up, make some jagged edges so that way you can make your peaks and your valleys, okay? For the mountains, I'm going to be using gathered twigs. This is more of a light brown. It's not necessarily quite too dark. It looks dark on the ink pad, but it does dry up fairly light. So I'm just going to pick the area that has some blue a little bit, just so I know where I'm going to start. So I have some of that coloring in the background, kind of an overlap. So I'm just gonna blend in some color. Okay, now I'm just gonna shift over my template and kind of make sure that they overlap a little bit on some of those mountain ridges. I also want to be gentle towards that bottom section of the mountains. I don't want it to overlap quite too much. I want to be gentle with that color on the edges at the bottom. So here you can see what I meant by being gentle. You can see that division between the two mountains, and that left quite a nice little variation of color. And I'm just going to fill in the color all the way down to the rest of the tag. Now, once I finish doing all this blending and bringing down that color, I'm going to come right back on in with black soot. It's time to create our road and the item on which our car is going to be driving. So I'm just going to go maybe about 1/2 inch up, and I think that's about maybe four of these little cross stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, that's about right. So I've got it even on both sides, making sure I'm counting 4 stitches. And then I'm just going to go ahead and blend in that black soot once I'm ready. I just want to make sure that I get it nice and straight and add enough saturation. Again, this is going to be fairly dark. This is how neat this looks. It's nice and straight, but not to worry, we're going to hide this with our car. All right, so we're going to come in with the white Jelly Roll pen and add some details. I want some detailing on the mountains. I don't want to go in straight lines. I want to make sure I kind of zigzag my way across, just adding in some lines here and there. Those will be the jagged edges that are being touched by the sun since they're raised and much closer. One of the things that I found with utilizing the jelly pen during this time was that it does tend to kind of pick up some of that color from the blending, some of that distress oxide, and also move it within the ink itself. So it does kind of blend just a little bit. So it lends itself very well to actually creating these jagged edges. So here you can see all the mountain tops that I have finished. I didn't want to cover up too much of those lines and divisions, but I'm going to come right on in and add some little lines to my my road. I want to have that little bit of a detail. Maybe I should put this up a little bit more, but that's okay. We don't have much room. So I want that to be at the bottom of my wheels on my car. Okay, so there you see all this lovely detail. Let's go ahead and have a closer look so you can see exactly what I mean. You have the detail from the road with that white line, and adding a touch of jelly pen just helps quite a bit. Now I'm just going to go ahead and straighten this out a little bit because it did warp with the water. Just kind of roll it back and forth to make sure that it's nice and straight. We have a beautiful image here. You can see just how well the watercolor played with that. And I'm sorry for the camera kind of going in and out of focus. It's trying to catch some color here. And I think this is exactly where I'm going to go ahead and adhere it down. Now this is going to be flat. I'm not going to have it picked up because it is going to go over those edges quite a bit. And if I end up utilizing foam tape, it'll probably fold. So here I have some liquid glue. I'm just going to go ahead and add that. I'd say maybe about 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of the paper on my vehicle here. I don't want those areas that are going to be hanging over to also have glue. Otherwise you kind of make a mess. So just be careful. I laid this down right onto my road and allowed the wheels to touch on the line. Once I finish laying down the card, I'm going to go ahead and add the rack on. I think it should be with these little wider section down, just to be right on top of the card. Again, I'm laying it flat onto my tag. And then I'm going to glue on the tree, and I want it going backwards, the wider side facing the front end of the car. And as you can see, it covered up a little bit of the mountain, but it left quite a lot still there. Now, I'm gonna come in, let me go ahead and practice because I'm gonna hand font Happy Holidays for the top of my tag. And I like practicing first before I kind of get onto my tag, because otherwise I will go ahead and mess this up. That's why I like using pencil. So let's go ahead and start. I'm going to go ahead and carefully write out Happy Holidays on my tag. Now I'm not pressing very heavily because I don't want it to ruin some of that the distress blending, because if I do press too hard and I have to come back and erase, which I actually have to do because that holiday is a little bit too small, so I want it a little bit bigger, it will tear up or lift up some of that ink. This way, now that I'm coming back in, it hasn't lifted up quite as much, and now I can actually easily come back in and write my holiday in a bigger font. Now I'm going to be coming right back in with a black ink pen. And this is a Stedlighter, so it's a jelly roll pen. And the reason why I picked this one is because it works very well on writing over the distress ink. It will not pick it up. The ink will actually continue rolling. So just make sure you take your time in writing out your font. You don't want to rush this, so that way you have a nice, neat hand font on your tag. Not to worry if anything does peek out from behind as far as your pencil. Once we finish here and we take our time with this, we'll come right back on in and erase the lines. One of the things that I like about hand fonts is that it gives it a much personal look. And now I have it ready with my little exclamation point going back to erase things. And now I just have a little bit of a finishing touch that I wanted to add, and that's just my little dash right across the bottom of my greeting. And look at how neat this actually looks. But I do have a little something that I want to add. It just needs a little something, not too much. I was thinking of adding a bow to the actual tree itself, but I have some bows that I purchased and they're really cute because they're these glitter paper bows, and they are from Hobby Lobby. You can find them there. And just add that right onto the corner of my tag. Make sure I don't cover up my font too much. And there you go. A beautiful tag, watercolor die cuts. You don't need to have stamps. Thanks for watching Heartcraftpaper. For more videos and tutorials like these, don't forget to subscribe. Visit the website at www.heartcraftpaper.com.